Hi, folks. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. We're just going to give it a second for all of you to be logging in. So if you'd like in the next minute and a half, and you'd like to let us know that you can hear us, feel free to drop in the Q&A box where you're calling in from. And we'll get to know a little bit more about who's listening while we wait for the Zoom numbers to sort of stabilize. If you're just joining us, I'm just inviting folks to tell us in the Q&A where you're in from. Oh, I can see some coming in: Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Pennsylvania, Florida, San Francisco. Hello, all of you. Hello. Let's see, Virginia, Houston, Long Island, that's my hometown.
Rhode Island, my home state. Excellent.
Here we are. Massachusetts, New York. Beautiful. We're just going to give this a second, and then we will go ahead and get started as we see that number. Billy. Oh, normally Florida, but up the road in gray. Hello, slightly closer. Lovely to see all of you. All right. I can still see a couple of people trickling in, but I think we are probably right about at that moment that we can get started. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, as all of you have so kindly introduced yourselves. My name is Jackie. I'm Associate Dean of Admissions here at Bowdoin. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Bowdoin alum. I graduated from here in 2012. And my co-presenter, please.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. My name is Evan Schoaf. I'm an Assistant Dean of Admissions here in the Bowdoin College Admissions Office. I use he, him pronouns. Very excited to have you all with us for a brief presentation, and then we'll get to all of your lovely questions.
Beautiful. So you are here for finding your fit in the college search process. So our goal with this presentation is sort of to give you a high level look for you and your families to start to think about the kinds of schools that you could be looking at and the things to consider when you're building your college list. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen just so that you know how the next hour will go. This presentation will probably be about 15 minutes or so. Evan and I are going to share some high level thoughts about just sort of how to start building your list. But most of this session is really intended for us to be able to answer your questions about that college search process and what you should be thinking about in the next coming months. So I really encourage you to drop questions in the Q&A either during our presentation or afterwards. We're going to have plenty of time to answer your questions. So if you came here with anything you hope is answered, please go ahead and drop it in the Q&A, even if we're presenting, and we'll be going through it at the end with a pretty robust amount of time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen and look for a quick thumbs up from Evan to indicate that this has gone well. Great, incredible. So the college search process, finding your fit. Again, we're your hosts for the evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you're calling in from. Thanks again for coming in. So first of all, in that college search process, depending on how many college guidebooks are stacked up on the desk next to you, what is fit? This is, I think, probably the most basic question when you start to think about colleges, but we also really encourage students and families to think more about fit than about prestige. And you'll see this, I think, throughout our presentation. And so fit is really about your own potential to be able to grow and meaningfully engage and thrive while in college. And it's your particular desires and needs that allow you to think about what you could bring to a college campus and how a college could serve you. So we really encourage you to go about this process thinking about what's best for you. Evan and I both love Bowdoin. We've both been here a number of years, but I think that we would be the first ones to acknowledge a small liberal arts college education is a really particular kind of education, and we're really happy to talk about that, but we really encourage every person listening to think about environments that you learn best in. So fit is really about you. Is where we really want you to start. And we really want to also emphasize that it's multidimensional, right? It's academic. Does this school have the programs I want, and so on? There are slides coming up that will talk more about this, and the personal pieces, and also the financial pieces, and being realistic about how to think about finances in that next step for yourself. So as you begin to discern fit, again, I touched on this before because it's something that we really want to drive home in this presentation. Remember that colleges and universities are more than their rankings, and it's not just about outcomes. We know, or not just about outcomes in the quote unquote terms. We here at small liberal arts colleges do talk a lot about tangible outcomes. We talk about job preparation. We talk about our career services centers. We talk about ways that we help students sort of find and pursue their passions. But we also really want to emphasize that your education is truly about learning how to learn. It's about learning how to adapt. It's about learning how to write. It's about learning how to defend your ideas. It's not just about what comes right after college. And so just keep this in mind. Again, our presentation is sort of designed to walk you through these pieces, but we really encourage you to not just be flipping through the magazine that shall not be named when it comes to things like rankings and prestige.
Well, and thank you, Jackie. So we just want to walk you through some different elements of fit that might help you guide your search process. And as we talk about these, we really want to emphasize that you should be upfront and clear with yourself with what you are looking for, and not just rely on a descriptor or adjective or category. And I'll give you an example as we go through these. So let's say that you are thinking to yourself that you want a large university in an urban area, but think about why you might want that. Are you hoping to get to experience many different classes from many different academic offerings? Are you hoping to be able to walk places, let's say go to the movies and restaurants right off of campus? If that's what you're looking for, you may be able to get that at a large research university, but you might be able to get that at other types of institutions as well. Oh, sorry, someone asked me to speak up. Jackie, can you hear me well?
Yes, maybe just lean in slightly closer to your
I
set.
apologize. I'm gonna move. How about that? Is that better?
Slightly.
Slightly?
Yeah.
Okay. Just go like this if you need me to speak up even
Speak
more.
up a little. Yeah.
Even more? Okay. Well, I'm just gonna yell. That's okay. Excellent. And please post in the chat if you do need me to clarify anything. I apologize. So the point that we're trying to make many points, but one of them is that we want you to think very clearly about what you are looking for in an institution instead of just relying on a descriptor. For example, at Bowdoin, we offer a variety of different academic programs, but we also understand that students are coming into college without clear certainty maybe of what they are hoping to study. So another point we want to make is that it is okay to still have uncertainty throughout your college search process. We understand that this can be overwhelming as you are looking through different institutions, let's say, and looking at their variety of extracurricular offerings. It may get overwhelming when you're coming across institutions that have 100, 200, 300 student organizations. It's okay to still approach this process with some uncertainty of what you might ultimately want out of your 4-year experience. But what we want you to know as you are beginning this college search process is just be clear about the sort of non-negotiables, the things that you really, really want out of your 4-year experience, and look for those specifically in the schools that you're looking for. But keep in mind that you are going to grow a lot when you are in college. I'm sure Jackie and I could both speak to this personally, that we were very different people when we were 22 and graduating than when we were 18 and entering college. And it's okay to recognize that you will change and maybe your non-negotiables will change, but it's a good place to start from to really think clearly about what you are looking for in your institution and to rely on those as you consider these elements of fit rather than just depending on categories or descriptors. And then as you create a list, we encourage you to start broadly and then maybe narrow it down. There are many different types of institutions out there. Bowdoin is a small, private, purely undergraduate liberal arts college, and we've put in many other categories up here. And these, of course, there can be overlap, But again, with our point before, that it's okay to approach this process with some uncertainty, that remains very much true here. You may want to start with a broad list of different types of institutions. But again, the point we really want to make is to think very clearly about what you are looking for and why you are thinking you might want to study at a particular type of institution. That's a great thing if you would like to study many different types of academic programs and you're looking for an institution that offers a wide array of courses, but you may get that at institutions besides a large research university. So think broadly about what you are looking for and really kind of narrow down based again on those non-negotiables. And then you can think more about the other factors that might be important to you, location, the campus culture, and we can talk more about who to ask and what to ask to find out about that. And then ultimately, as you are spending time and coming up with your final college list, we really encourage you to try to approach this with the ultimate goal of having options that you will be happy with. And we say that because we think it's important to have a list that has a diversity of selectivity rates. Bowdoin is a highly selective institution, but we won't necessarily be the right institution for everyone. And even the students we might not be able to admit are still great students that will be really successful at another institution. Ultimately, what you want to do as you are putting together your list is think about yourself in senior year as you're ultimately deciding where to attend, and you want to have a list that you will be happy with.
Lovely. And so as you've made your list, our goal is to really help you figure out how to narrow that list down. And so the actions that you take after sort of exploring this, like whatever college search finder you're using, whatever search engine you're finding, is to get to know us. Join our mailing list, explore online and print materials. These are sort of like the most obvious and like front of mind for you, right? And ways for you to just really start at the most basic level of figuring out how a place talks about itself and what they're proud of. But then as you join the mailing list, explore those materials, you start to create sort of a funnel of your top colleges. And this, I don't think, is going to be rocket science, but as you start to create that funnel, visit the campus or on your own or apply for fly-in programs. We have a fly-in program that we run each fall for students who wouldn't otherwise be able to visit. That goes through an application process. And many of our peer schools will also often offer fly-in programs. And sometimes visiting the campus does make that difference in knowing how you want your school to feel and in meeting current students and in having that experience of what, 24 to 48 hours at one of your colleges on your college list could look like. Connecting with current students can happen either through our own websites. A lot of college websites will host Ask a Student pages for you to ask current students questions, or you can connect with students on social media. I don't think that will come as a surprise. And then a lot of schools will still offer interviews. You can get informational interviews, especially if you're visiting, to talk to students or admissions officers about what life at that college could look like. One of my tips that I give students, especially students who are looking at us from far away, I know that Maine probably is not on the road to many of the places that you're traveling if you're calling us, especially from outside of New England. But one of the things that I encourage students to do in their sophomore or junior year is to just visit local colleges, visit the college down the street. I grew up in a college town, and I grew up next to one of New York State's universities. And it was just good to know that was a size of university. I went on a campus tour there when I was in high school and just got a sense for, okay, this feels a little bit big for me, right? Like I can see this like campus bus that takes, an hour-long loop around the campus. And even though it wasn't about anything about what they offered, and categorically as Evan was talking about, it was just really helpful to say, okay, like this is one of those college experiences. And as you narrow your list, it can be really helpful to just leverage what's close to you. If you have small colleges, big colleges, whatever they are, visit schools that are accessible to you and figure out, like, does this size feel good? Does the walkability feel good? Do these like buildings and the students, and does the environment here feel like a school that I might want to think about, or the kind of school I might want to think about, before you really start to spend that money on like plane tickets and minivan trips and all of those things over your school breaks. And this is why exploration matters, right? This is a way for us to ensure that students and families receive the information that you value. And we hope that this makes the process less daunting and more human-centered. Both Evan and I are readers and evaluators for the college. We're admissions counselors. We both have territories. We both spend the fall traveling and the winter reading and the spring selecting. We do all of those pieces, and I hope that through our presentation, or maybe through our fun, witty banter, we are human people, right? Like, we on the other end, every single fall and every single winter, spend so much of our time trying to make the college admissions process understandable and hopefully less daunting, and just try to be in honest and open conversation with our applicants. The other thing that exploration does is that it prepares students to begin advocating for yourselves before you arrive on a college campus. It is college, it is going to be a big transition, and a lot of the resources that are available in colleges are available, but you need to figure out how to self-advocate and what's available to you. We see this a lot with things like fellowships and internships, is that you'll have incredible access to career centers and to fellowship offices and people whose full-time jobs are to help you do things like study abroad or find summer jobs. But a lot of that will have to do with you being able to go to those offices and advocate for yourself and think about the things that you want to be doing, because the resources are absolutely there, but only if you know about them, and only if you come into college open to the idea that those are the things that you might be looking for. So as you do your college process and find out sort of what colleges can help you do, it's a really good idea to keep those on a list so that wherever you end up the following fall, you know what you're looking for when you start.
Thank you, Jackie. And we've spent so much time telling you what you should be looking for, and now we think we should tell you how to actually get some of that information. And we'll start with telling you who you should ask about various things. And the admissions office is always a good place for you to start. We are, in some ways, we're the switchboard of the college. We can help direct your inquiry. We know a lot about the institution. But ultimately, what the admissions office is here to do is tell you about the application process and make sure you have an understanding of that. There are other parts of the college experience that you might be curious about, and we've tried to categorize these to be a little helpful. So contacting the college's financial aid office, which might also be called the student aid office or student financial services, they will help you with things related to cost and scholarships and aid, and maybe even campus employment. If you want to know if your AP exams will transfer over and if you will get credit, the registrar's office will have your answer to that. Pretty much every higher education institution, including Bowdoin, will have a prepared list of what scores you need on pre-matriculation exams to receive credit, as well as any institutional policies related to receiving that credit. So we encourage you to check out the registrar's website for that information. Bowdoin does have an athletic program, and our coaches can tell you more about how to potentially get involved with varsity athletics. And then this last category, student life and academics, is of course a big one that is a significant part of your college experience. And truthfully, we think that current students are the best way to give you an insight into whether an institution will be right for you. For lack of a better word, you ultimately want to get a sense of the vibes. The vibes really matter. Your instinct will tell you a lot about whether an institution is right for you. So there are different ways you can interact with current students. To give you some examples, you can go visit a college campus for a tour or information session or whatever planned programming that the institution offers. And as Jackie was talking about, it doesn't need to be an institution that you are certain you are super excited about. Just visiting any institution and hearing from any current college students about their experience will help give you insight into what you are looking for. Many colleges, including Bowdoin, also now offer expanded virtual opportunities to engage with the institution and with current students. So for example, a lot of institutions have a form of an Ask a Student page where you can see profiles of current students and read about them and then directly submit questions to them. Finally, something that we always like to emphasize is that it is a great idea to just peruse the campus newspaper, or whatever sort of writing that current students are doing, it's a great way to get a sense of the vibes of the institution, is to read exactly what students are saying about their experience. But as always, the admissions office, if you need help finding something, we are here to help. And as you're trying to think about what you might ask all of these lovely people in offices that we've mentioned, we've tried to segment this into two different categories, social and academic, because these will allow you to think about, again, those non-negotiables that you might ultimately have as you complete your college search process. So we've listed off some items like residential life and extracurriculars that are really important, but there are other things like the first year transition that you might not be thinking about, but we will be really important. As Jackie said, college is difficult for everyone. It is going to be a transition, and it can be a difficult transition. So starting to think, for example, about what will my first week on campus look like? What sort of support will I have? As we think about the academic category, what is advising like? Really start to think about what your maybe first semester on campus will like and how it will be like to acclimate to your new home for 4 years. Thinking that way will help kind of guide you through this search process. And we also did want to include outcomes on there. That is important. Ultimately, college is an investment in your future, and we know that is really important. But on the other hand, you are spending 4 years living and learning and really being involved in an institution, and you want to be happy for those 4 years. So the on-campus 4-year experience does matter, even though the outcomes matter as much as well. So keep all these things in mind. Jackie, I'll send it back over to you to finish us off.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, this is your process. Families, we want you to go through this together, but ultimately the students are the ones who are going to be making these decisions. And we really want to empower you to give you some of those ideas and to give you the space to make the decisions that you need to make, but also honestly, and this is one of the tips that I tell a lot of high school seniors as we meet them over the summer and over the fall, you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to start in June saying, I think I really want a research university for X, Y, and Z reason, and spend some time reading and looking at all of these pieces and say by the end of the summer or into the fall even, and just say, you know what, I think I do want to look at smaller schools, or vice versa. You could start this process and say, I really want to go to a really small school. I think that's really important to me. And then as you perhaps go on local tours or do a little bit more research, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to cast a wide net. You're the only one who can decide whether a place or a set of places feels like a really good fit for you. And while we encourage you to make those decisions, obviously with the support of and alongside your family and other folks in your household, ultimately it's up to you. So we're here to help. I'm going to go ahead and stop this share so you're going to see our lovely faces much larger than they were before. I see a number of questions in the chat already. So Evan, if you want to go ahead and start reading them out, we'll
Excellent
for answering.
So thanks for sitting through our lovely presentation, and we'll now answer all of your questions. As a reminder, you can use the Q&A box down at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit any questions for us, and we will either answer them orally or we might type in a response for some of them. But we'll start off. Do you track demonstrated interest? Great question. So just to kind of start, if you've heard the phrase demonstrated interest before, some higher education institutions, when making admission decisions, do consider whether an applicant has been involved with the institution or the admissions office in some way. So some colleges will track your engagement with the institution in deciding who to admit. Bowdoin does not do that. So that is a valid question that you can ask your admissions officer, various admissions offices, if they're keeping track of your engagement. Bowdoin does not track that. Demonstrated interest is not a part of our selection process. But we do offer a lot of different programming and opportunities for you to learn about Bowdoin. And we have those for you because we ultimately want you to determine whether Bowdoin is the right fit for you. So we hope you'll take advantage of opportunities like this that you're currently involved in, but they're really for you to learn more about the institution, whether it's the right fit for you, and it won't play a factor, at least for Bowdoin, in your ultimate admission decision. How can you join a college's mailing list? Well, the good news is everyone watching this is now on the Bowdoin mailing list. So if you sign up for any sort of event, that is one way to get on a college's mailing list. If you would also like a more direct way to do so, every college, usually run by the admissions office, will have a request for information or join our mailing list form. This can be as easy as just Googling college name mailing list or college name request for information. It'll likely be the first link that comes up, but you'll also find it linked right on the admissions page usually. But again, you are all on our mailing list now. We will be sending you some lovely polar bear themed emails, but not too many. We don't try to flood your inboxes. We're very careful about that. Is there an easier way to look up colleges/universities? Is there a website you recommend to use to put your own options for a college that narrows it down for you? So Jackie, chime in if you have other thoughts. The College Board really does have an excellent search process. So the College Board Big Futures is a great search tool. Really, the students we've worked with have found it really helpful. It'll allow you to filter and narrow down what you're looking for, to compile a list of colleges. So I think that's a great one. Thank you, Jackie, for linking me in there. You may also find that working with certain organizations might be helpful. So we have students that work with community-based organizations, or CBOs as we call them, around the country and around the world. And those can be really helpful for having a list of colleges as well. An example that you might be familiar with is QuestBridge. And so there are a number of institutions, I think 40, 41, Jack, you might know better than me, that are participants in the QuestBridge National Match Program. And so that's an example of an organization that will provide a list of institutions for you, and it'll give you ways to kind of review all those and help you narrow down your list. So those are, I think, a couple places where I would start. Anything to add, Jackie?
No, I think that's great.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead, please.
We have, hello, do you consider dual enrollment courses on an equal level as AP courses when you evaluate prospective students? So the answer to this, at least from a Bowdoin's perspective, is typically what we're looking for to see in someone's transcript is that you are taking rigorous classes and taking the rigor that is available to you. We don't have a rule of whether dual enrollment is necessarily on the same level as AP. What we want to see is that students are taking a full slate of academic courses in progressively higher rigor as they proceed through high school. Whether you are taking AP Calculus or Calc 1 at your local college, that's not going to make a difference for us. What matters to us is seeing that you have pursued rigor in mathematics. And so it's ultimately the rigor that matters, taking advantage of what is available to you. Okay. With such small class sizes, is it difficult to get the classes you need for your major? So I can kind of, again, answer in a Bowdoin specific context and then maybe answer more generally, since I'm sure you're all looking at many different institutions. So with Bowdoin, we do have small class sizes, but we also offer a wide variety of classes, and we do have a pretty small student to faculty ratio, so about 8 to 1. And so we're able to offer many different classes for students to get involved in. Occasionally, it might happen that you might get lotteried out of your first choice class, but typically by working with your advisor, we can usually get you into your top options. And certainly with our advising and planning system, we can usually work with students to get there. But it is a valid and fair question to have, certainly as you're looking at different institutions. I think it's an appropriate thing to ask admissions offices at the institutions you're looking at to get a sense of how often classes might get lotteried, or if for certain very popular majors or classes that they often go to a lottery system or get over enrolled. So it's the right sort of question to be asking. All right, Jackie, I'm going to throw this one to you. What is the difference between a liberal arts versus a research-based college? What's the difference in the type style of work?
Delightful. Just thinking about the broad range of colleges out there, you'll see a lot in college guidebooks that people sort of define colleges along a spectrum. One end being small liberal arts colleges and the other being large research universities. They're defined along the spectrum and not along necessarily just like basically circles by themselves, because a lot of those traits are going to overlap, especially as you come towards the middle of like mid-sized research universities and universities that have colleges of arts and sciences and things like that. But at the broadest possible level, small liberal arts colleges, as Evan talked about, focus on undergraduate experiences. Bowdoin and many of our peer colleges, the tip-off often is college in the name, although not a universal rule. We don't have graduate schools. We don't have schools of journalism or business. We don't have like a medical school that students can attend afterwards. We are focused on that 4-year Bachelor of Arts experience. And that means a couple of things that a lot of small liberal arts colleges will talk about. They'll talk about small class sizes. They'll talk a lot about professor-student relationships and really getting to know your professors. There's a pretty good small liberal arts trope, which like truly holds true among a lot of small liberal arts colleges, of like dinner at your professors' houses, right? Getting to like seeing your professor walk their dogs across the campus and things like that. Small liberal arts colleges are really about the small class sizes and getting to know the professors that you work with and getting to know a really small and intimate classroom community. Bowdoin for me was smaller than my high school had been, and that was really intentional on my part. I graduated with about 700 people in my high school class, and here at Bowdoin I graduated with 500 people in my senior class. And that was a really intentional experience for me because I really wanted a school that really allowed me to experience and explore across the curriculum, which is a big thing about liberal arts colleges, is sort of the breadth of the curriculum and encouraging students to take a lot of classes across, and also those relationships. Liberal arts colleges often get ragged on because there's a perception that we don't do research here. I want to be clear. We are rigorous academic institutions. We do world-class research at our schools. And for a lot of students who are looking for those research experiences, small liberal arts colleges can be really incredible places to score some really great research opportunities, because we don't have graduate students who are competing for those same spots or same attention, right? Professors teach 100% of those classes, and professors are still doing extraordinary levels of research and need research assistants to do it. And so small liberal arts colleges have those opportunities. And the same vein, large research universities also have really extraordinary resources, right? By nature, they're larger. By nature, they offer more classes. Some of those classes will be bigger, but they also have small classroom sizes. A lot of them will have colleges of arts and sciences that mimic or really closely resemble that liberal arts experience that students can be looking for. So large research universities will often have separate schools, right? So you'll hear, they'll have business schools, med schools, law schools, whatever they may be, attached to the school as well. They'll be significantly larger, and they'll just have a different set of resources. So it just sort of depends on what you're looking for. Again, there are universities across that spectrum, right? There are small liberal arts colleges that will have small graduate schools attached. There are large research universities that will talk about parts of their campus that have really small classes, and everything along that spectrum. So things to think about.
Excellent. Thank you, Jackie. We've got a lot of questions in the Q&A, so we might do some jumping around.
Yeah.
But I saw one that here it is. How would you describe the vibe at Bowdoin, since I did use that word previously? Jackie, I think we can both answer, but I'll start off by saying I think collaborative is a really important one. We want college to be some of the best 4 years of your life, and you are not going to feel that way if you are constantly competing with your classmates. We recognize that a lot of the students that we are admitting, a lot of the students that are in the college search process, a lot of you all that are watching might be attending high schools where there is more of a competitive vibe. And we do not want to replicate that in the college experience. So when you have a situation, for example, let's say you're in one of our first year seminars and you are presenting an essay you wrote to the seminar, we want you to feel like that your peers, your fellow classmates are there to support you, that if you get criticism or feedback, that it is constructive and well-meaning. We want you to feel like that your peers are really here to support you in and outside the classroom. We really try to emphasize a sense of collaboration from the minute you arrive on campus through when you graduate and even after. We have a very involved alumni community. So a collaborative vibe is a really important one. Do you have anything to add, Jackie?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think people often just talk about when they come to visit, just sort of how like one of the challenges, or sometimes I'll tell visitors to like stand in the middle of the quad holding a campus map and just count how many people ask you if you know where you're going or if we can help you or things like that. And I think that that's really the vibe, is that students here work really hard. Evan and I both know, we read the files of the students who go here. They are really, really, really intensely focused on the work that they're doing, but they're also, and this is something we value in our admissions process, they're also really engaged and kind and community focused. So I'm sure that you hear that from all the colleges, but we're really, really proud of our students.
Thank you. And I think this one is a good follow-up. Is there a type of mindset or personality that struggles at college more so at Bowdoin? And for the inverse, personalities that greatly succeed. So I think one important thing to know about Bowdoin and our style of education is that you can't slip through the cracks at Bowdoin. You can't fade into the background. And so that doesn't mean you need to be the class discussion leader and president of everything and be a super extroverted person, because certainly not everyone at Bowdoin is that. But you do need to be willing to be present. And so, for example, if you don't show up to class one day, you might get an email from your professor, not getting you in trouble or anything, but just asking if you're okay or if you're sick or if you need anything. So people will know who you are in your time at Bowdoin. You won't just be a number or anything. The staff and the faculty and the fellow students you interact with will know who you are and will expect to see you in class and at student group meetings that you're a part of. So I think just a willingness to be present and to fully embrace your 4 years here in the full residential academic experience is really important. Bowdoin is right for a lot of people, but if you're hoping to, just kind of slip through the cracks or maybe fade into the background in your college experience, Bowdoin might not be the right place for you. Anything to add, Jackie?
No, I think that's a really good point. My smallest class here was a class of 4 students. And for me, that was really great. I was a history major. My favorite thing was meeting up with 3 other students and my professor and like talking about the nitty gritty of what we were studying that week, but that is not for everyone. So just know that to be true.
Great, thank you for that. So, okay. I'm just kind of jumping around, trying to get to a variety of questions. I think this is a good one, so I do know we have people interested in athletics. What is the best way to get a sense of the athletic club teams that a college has? How many students participate in club teams and how competitive or non-competitive they may be? So as always, I think for anything related to athletics, starting with the athletics department at the college is a great way to start. The athletics department may not oversee club activities, so they may direct you to student activities. You can also start with the admissions office, but just kind of get a sense of maybe how many students participate in club athletics. At Bowdoin, it's about 1/3 of our student body, is a great way to do so. I would also reiterate what I said previously about perusing student newspapers. So the Bowdoin Orient, for example, will have articles on our athletic programs, including club sports, that can give you a sense of how our club teams interact and what the sort of schedules and demands are. And again, ask your student pages. Trying to get in touch with current students that might be involved in club athletics can also give you an insight. But again, if you are finding it difficult, just perusing websites, either the admissions office or the athletics office will be a good place to start. Okay. Similar vein, athletics. What is the athletics admissions process? So every institution handles their athletic recruitment differently. I think it is fair to say, though, that we all expect our coaches to play a prominent role in the athletic program. So if you are considering Bowdoin and you are considering playing a varsity sport, as a number of our students do, we are a Division III school in the NESPAC conference, you should reach out directly to the coach for the team that you might be interested in joining if you'd like to know more about what it's like to be a varsity athlete at Bowdoin. But we want to emphasize, just again, from a Bowdoin perspective, that at the end of the day, we are an academic institution. And so every applicant goes through the same admissions process And your application, your academics, your character, that all matters, because even if you are a varsity athlete here, you will still be in the classroom and on student organizations and in the residence halls. And so it's important to keep that in mind, that everyone goes through the same admission process. But if you do want to learn more about playing a varsity sport at Odin, the coaches are the best place to start. Okay, I totally lost my spot. Although this one kind of follows up with what I was just saying. What are the top 2 to 3 things admissions look for when accepting a new student? So if you've attended a Bowdoin presentation before, you may have seen this lovely little pie chart that we have. And we just got this beautiful poster installed in our lobby last fall that we were all really excited about. And it says what we look for in your application. And it's a pie chart with 2 things, and they're 50-50. And it's academics and character. And those are the things that really ultimately matter to us. Academics matter because we are a rigorous academic institution. We really pride ourselves in having a challenging academic program. We do have a lot of support here. We can help you through Bowdoin. You won't just be on your own. Again, you don't slip through the cracks here. But at the end of the day, we need to see that you have indicated that you are willing to take on rigorous classes and generally can do well in those classes. But your character is just as important. We're a highly residential college. About over 90% of students are living on campus all 4 years. You are in the dining halls with your peers. You are out at the pool with your peers. You are in the student union with your peers. And so we really need to get a sense of your willingness to collaborate, to cooperate with each other. Again, we want college to be the best 4 years of your life, and you won't feel that way if we're admitting students that don't have the good character and collaboration that we want all Bowdoin students to have. So those are the top 2 things that matter to Bowdoin. Okay, I've totally kind of lost my spot. So I'm just, Jackie, let me know if you want to take one. I'm just going to answer questions. There's no way we're going to get
feel free to punt some to me. Those of you who are asking questions, I'm answering a lot by typing out the answers. So feel free to tab between those and you'll find a lot of those answers. And Evan, we can, here, why don't I take some and then you take a chance at typing.
Okay, oh, that sounds great. Well, yes, go ahead. I didn't hit answer live, so
all right.
Your pick.
Here's a question just asking about taking a gap year between high school and college. We do see students who do that, and I want to talk quickly about the process because sometimes that's what students decide that they want to do. There are a couple of ways to go about taking a gap year. One option is if you're a rising senior, you can still go through the college admissions process and you can do the whole thing from start to finish. You can choose your colleges, apply, hopefully get in and matriculate, and then request a gap year from the college that you've matriculated at. So here at Bowdoin, we see this process. This is a thing that we see with about 20 to 25 students of our matriculants every year, is they decide to do a gap year. And then we ask them to tell us about our plans, and then we have a small committee that reviews those plans and approves and sometimes declines those gap year plans. There are other students who will just choose to do a gap year, right? So you could be going through this process your senior year and say, I think it's really important for myself to take a gap year. I'm not sure what kind of school I want to go to. I'm not sure I want to go through the college admissions process. And then they take a gap year and then apply during that gap year. There's not a good or bad on this. Part of our job here is to talk about how every student sort of knows what they individually need and what's most beneficial. So that's the process for how those gap years go. We see a lot of students have a lot of success after gap years, just in terms of either matriculating after taking a gap year in our process, or students who have taken a gap year who are applying during their gap year. And a lot of times it's just because you have that extra year. You're no longer sort of in the crunch time of college and senior year. Senior year can, we hear from high school students and experienced it some time ago ourselves, it can feel really tight. And so some students who really just need that space between college and high school, or high school and college, really get beneficial advantages out of it. So we see students both on the front end and on the back end, and just know that there are processes built in for students to experience that. All right. other questions? I'm seeing Evan, I'm sure, and myself will go through and answer a lot of really Bowdoin specific questions. I think that we're trying to answer out loud questions that are more broadly applicable. So just know if you're asking a specific question about Bowdoin, we're going to try to get to it in the chat. But in the meantime, we're going to try to talk about sort of the college application process and what could be useful in college search. There are a lot of questions here generally that I'm seeing about like AP classes and dual enrollment classes and rigor in high school, and what if I'm good at one thing and not at another. And so I think one of the a good thing for us to do is to take a big step back and think about rigor and selectivity and what that means at Bowdoin and then at other institutions. So here at Bowdoin, when we look at your transcript, just know that the number one question that we are trying to answer on your transcript is, can this student be successful at our college? That's not just here, actually, I know I said at Bowdoin, but really generally in colleges and in college admissions, the number one question that we are always trying to answer is, can this student be successful here? And that means that it's my job and Evan's job to be really well versed in what your high school offers and what success looks like and what rigor looks like in your high school. We are not asking students who have, 30 APs available at their school to be taking 30 APs, because otherwise we won't think that they took a rigorous curriculum. What we are asking is if there's rigor available at your school, honors classes, AP classes, dual enrollment classes, post-AP classes, advanced classes, whatever your school calls them. And we know that your schools call them a lot of different things. If there is rigor available to you, the best way for us to make an assessment for whether you are ready to take on the challenge of entering a college classroom is for you to demonstrate that you've taken on a level of challenge in your high school environment. For us, that signal of jumping into an honors class, of jumping into an advanced class, of jumping into an AP class or an IB class, or again, whatever your school calls them, that challenge represents to us your ability to take on further challenge when you enter your classrooms in your first year of Bowdoin. And so we look at your transcripts comprehensively. We don't ding students for every time that they faltered, right? A lot of the students that we're talking to on this webinar know how hard the past 2.5 to 3 years have been. We're not looking to penalize you. We're not looking for reasons to say no, but instead we're looking for reasons to support a hypothesis that this student could do well on our college campus and in our classrooms. So again, seeing just a general amount of like a lot of worry about like what a competitive GPA looks like and what happens if I'm just bad at math or I'm just bad at English. First of all, we will be looking at your transcript holistically, and it's not out of the ordinary that we see students who are stronger in some areas than others. You're in high school, it's a very typical experience. And so my job is to just look at these transcripts and determine what academic success looks like for you. Can you take on the challenge? Can we see you doing well within our classrooms? So hopefully that talks a little bit about the rigor and sort of what we expect, which is, again, that you need, if it's available to you, we just need to see some amount of rigor on your transcript to help us say, we think they can take on the challenge. We think that they're ready for that next step. The other thing is that I'm describing rigor at Bowdoin and what looks competitive for us in, again, a really highly selective college process. So the thing that I have just described, in which I say, like, it's really good to see some amount, to see you taking a little bit of breath across that rigor. That describes, again, a really highly selective college environment. And so just know that even how schools define rigor or how schools define the potential to succeed at their colleges will differ across the board. So my answer for what competitive looks like is going to look really different than other colleges on your college list. So just know that every single college is looking for what academic success could look like in their institutions. All right. Let's see. There are some questions just generally about liberal arts colleges I'm seeing, and just how to think about how to get to know a liberal arts college and what sets us apart. I'm going to tell you right now, I went to this college, I work at this college. I really love Bowdoin and what we do, but that means that I can't speak as strongly to what separates us from our peers simply by nature of my experience and what we talk about when we talk about Bowdoin. So the things that I think are really special about Bowdoin, that I think is different than other colleges, although again, like this is sort of my hometown. Some of the things that we talk about are our location here in Brunswick, Maine. We're right next to the Gulf of Maine and the coast. And we have the Schiller Coastal Study Center, which is 120 acres of land directly on the Gulf of Maine, where our students are doing hands-on research. But beyond just our interest in coastal studies and marine biology and the environment, which are all programs that we're incredibly proud of and are some of our largest and most popular programs on campus, and a lot of why a lot of students come to us. I would also say that we have a really deep connection to place for our students. Students get really deeply involved in the state of Maine. Students really figure out and find, I hope, Maine to be home just as much as Bowdoin is. One of my anecdotes is in my housing block, there were 8 students. I had 7 other roommates that lived in a suite together when we were students. 6 of us now live in Maine. And that to me is sort of a conversation about how we found home, not just at Bowdoin, but also within the community and within the place that we went to school. So those are some of the things that I think about when we talk about what makes Bowdoin really special and how we think about that. All right. I do see, I want to highlight again, we're seeing a lot of questions in here. And so I want to emphasize that if it's a Bowdoin specific question, we're going to try to get to it. But a lot of these questions we're not just going to get to. All right, let's see. There's just a question here about, whoops, that's typing, how we expect college admissions process to change after the pandemic, and how does the applicant pool differ? We have anecdotal evidence from our end. We hear from a lot of students that they're applying to a lot more colleges. And I think both Evan and I would say that we can see both the good things and the bad things about that for students. Part of the pandemic, actually, that was really great was that there are way more virtual offerings, right? Like Evan and I are on this screen. We were not on these screens in 2019. And now virtual offerings are built into our schedule. We're not going to stop offering them because they offer access, hopefully, to a lot of you who are not otherwise going to be able to visit our campus or are only going to be visiting our campus after a pretty thorough college search process enabled by the incredible availability of virtual offerings. And so what we saw in our pool was just a lot of different students who were finding Bowdoin on their own, frankly. And that also meant that those students were finding us, they were finding our peer colleges, and we heard from a lot of students, especially during COVID, that because they weren't allowed or able to visit, or allowed to visit in early COVID, that students just cast a much broader net. And we're still seeing some of that. We're still seeing a little bit of that. A couple years on is students who are just casting a much wider net than we were seeing 4 or 5 years ago. But for us, the things that we have valued for our applicants have remained the same. And there's a lot of questions in here about that too. What makes students stand out? Like once you look at the transcript and you determine that the student could be successful here, what makes a student stand out? Again, this question will differ by college. Different colleges will evaluate applications differently. They'll be looking for different things. Here at Bowdoin, I like to say that the thing that we look for, when we ask 2 questions of an application, one is, can the student be academically successful here? And the second question is, if so, what kind of roommate are they going to be? And in that question is wrapped your recommendations, your essay, your extracurricular commitments. We really take a lot of time and care in looking at how the students in our applicant pool think about themselves in relationships to their communities and to the people around them, to the people that they care about. We really have a big emphasis on community building and empathy and kindness in our application process, and that goes a long way. We look for it in recommendations, we look for it in how your teachers and your peers talk about you, and we look at it in your extracurricular activities and your essay and how you think about the world. So I'll say that obviously admissions can be really competitive, but just know that that's one of the things that in our process we're really prioritizing and how we're thinking about that. All right, so I'm going to take a look at a couple of different things. There's a question just about how financial aid works and if there are opportunities to talk about financial aid with our student aid offices. And the answer is yes. If your family experienced serious financial difficulties or your household experienced some serious or major changes as a result of COVID and anticipate those moving forward, we really encourage you to talk to our student aid office if you are going through the process of applying, especially if you're thinking about applying early. This is one of the things about being a small college is that we really pride ourselves on that personal touch throughout the application process. Our student aid offices, starting in the summer and then throughout the fall, are able to have conversations with prospective families about how our financial aid calculator could treat your family, and also being able to say, fill out the FAFSA, which is the federal form for student aid, fill out the CSS profile, which is the College Board form for student aid. And then if those don't align with what your family is experiencing because of the years of information that they rely on, then you can go ahead and write to us directly, call us directly, and we have an appeals process to go through those to go through that financial aid and to really figure out why our documents aren't aligning with the story. And then often we'll offer you an appeal process. So that will be really different across different colleges. So do keep those questions in mind as you go through your college and university search process, and just know that we will really focus on working with families, and that's something you should think about as you look at colleges across the board. All right, there is a question here. Can you talk about early admissions, early decision, and regular admission, and how that works for families about financial aid offers before making decisions? So this comes down again to really specific students and the list of colleges that you are applying to. What I can share is that here at Bowdoin, our early decision process is binding. So we expect that our students who are applying apply to one college, us only. And if you're accepted, that you accept our offer. You do receive your financial aid offer on the same day. So at the same time that you hopefully get your admit letter, you would also get your financial aid letter. This is why, number one, we really emphasize talking to our financial aid offices. If you're applying for financial aid and you have any questions about the potential for that you talk to our offices before applying. But the second thing is that this will differ, because for Bowdoin, we really pride ourselves on our need-based aid. We really believe that our financial aid packages are incredibly comprehensive and competitive. We pride ourselves on meeting 100% of need with no loans packaged within that. But there are other schools that will say, apply early, we run out of money, we run out of merit aid, apply early to be most competitive, apply early for housing access and things like that. I can't speak to those processes, but I can say that that is a question that you'll want to continue to ask. So I can say here at Bowdoin that you don't get a financial aid boost because we only have need-based aid. If you apply early to us, you will receive the same financial aid offer as when or if you apply regular decision, but that can differ across colleges and universities, and I think will differ pretty significantly. So for things like merit aid, scholarships, other things like that, continue to ask that question, because that is incredibly important. As Evan pointed out a few minutes ago, 4 years of college is an investment. We're really proud of our aid processes, but they can look incredibly different across that landscape. All right, I have also lost my place in the questions, but I see that we only have actually about 2 minutes left on this webinar, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I see so many questions. And so I want to encourage you, if you have a question that did not get answered, either go ahead and check out our website or feel free to email us. You can email us at admissions@bowdoin.edu. I'm dropping that in the chat right now. And if there's a question that you have that we weren't able to get to, I'm so sorry. There's so many questions in the chat and some really good questions. So feel free to go ahead and email us, and one of us or someone else will get back to you in talking about hopefully being able to help answer your questions. But in the meantime, it seems like a lot of you are taking a lot of those first steps in thinking about what college could look like for you, and sort of how you're thinking about your college applications. It looks like you're off on a great start. So I'm going to leave Evan to say, some last few words.
Thank you, Jackie. I've just really been fading into the darkness, haven't I? Well, thanks everyone for spending an hour with us. In the chat, I just put a link to our admissions staff page. So we split up the country and the world into regions, and we are all assigned to one of those. So based on where your high school is located, you can look to see who your regional admissions officer is. If you have any questions going forward, please reach out and we will be happy to help you. We know this can be a difficult process at times, but we're here to help. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to end up at a college where you're going to be happy and where you'll thrive for 4 years.
Yeah.
We can be of any help. Let us know.
Yeah, please do let us know if you have any questions. Thanks again for your active participation, and wherever you're calling in from, have a lovely morning, afternoon, or evening, and good luck and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.